The following program, Live and Learn, is made possible by Aging Partners. Find out more on their website at agingpartners@lincoln.ne.gov.
I'm Lita Powell Drake, and the OLLI classes are beginning in September. You're invited to a free open house at the Cornhusker Hotel. Stay tuned for more details.
What happens in the state of Nebraska if you don't have a will? You may or may not get to decide what happens to your estate after you pass. But my guest, Andrew Loudon, will give you all of the information you need to get started on making this estate plan your own.
I'm Sam Truax, and today on Live and Learn, my guest is Cindy Van Bibber, the director of the Omaha National Cemetery, Department of Veterans Affairs, who will tell us about the new national cemetery that's being developed in Nebraska.
We are turning the tables on a couple of our hosts today, Chris Beckenbaugh and Tom White. Please stay with us to hear about their enjoyment of being a Live and Learn host and why this chair could be perfect for you.
This and more on today's Live and Learn.
Ever wish you could go back to school but just take subjects that interest you? Well, we have the opportunity through OLLI. And we want to welcome Dr. Dee Aguilar, who is the coordinator for OLLI, the Osher Lifelong Learning Institute, coming up with some really special things for the fall. Welcome to Live and Learn, my dear Dee, and tell us a little bit about OLLI. What does OLLI stand for?
Oh, this is a great opportunity, Lita, to share with everyone what OLLI is all about. OLLI is the Osher Lifelong Learning Institute at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. It's part of a national program, actually. We are one of 119 sites serving over 200,000 adults 50 and older across the United States. There's at least one OLLI in every state, and it's phenomenal that we are the one for Lincoln.
Well, who is Mr. Osher, the generous man to do this?
Mr. Osher is such a fine and benevolent individual. Here's a man from humble beginnings who made his fortune and decided that philanthropy was an important part of his life and established the Osher Foundation and launched the initiatives establishing the OLLIs nationally as one of the initiatives of his foundation.
So it had to be through colleges and universities, right, across all the states?
Absolutely. To walk into a room, Mr. Osher is just like one of the rest of us.
And he is, what, 86 or 87 or something?
He's right in there. I would have to check his age.
Isn't it amazing? And some of the stipulations are the fact that these professors who will be teaching the classes will either be current professors at the universities or maybe retired people or experts in the field. So you're getting quality classes no matter what they are.
Oh, absolutely. We are very fortunate to have all of the individuals that teach the classes that we offer, Lita, and they volunteer their time.
Isn't that amazing?
It's tremendous.
How many members are in our Nebraska OLLI?
Our Nebraska OLLI currently has around over 1,500 members, which is phenomenal considering that one time we were struggling to get to 500 members.
Yeah, and now you take classes, and there are no grades. You don't have to be worried about that, and well, no books unless there might be a reading class or history class or something. So it's just for the joy of learning. And so, OLLI is here, and there's something we want you to see. We'll look at what some of the OLLI members have to say about their experience with OLLI.
Searching out for brain food and saw this and grabbed a chance to do it.
I think it's amazing. And how creative. Lots of choices, times of day, days of the week.
You're constantly meeting new people.
Yes.
It opens your eyes to a whole nother world.
Well, last year I saw 127 total, and I'm at about 110 right now. I just added 3 this morning.
It's beautiful. It's outside, and I love nature.
When you take a class like this, then you've got some experts pointing out exactly what it is that you're looking at.
This is a very common condition.
We have the opportunity to get information from practicing doctors.
Diabetes and
all the infectious diseases. Yes, that was fascinating. There's a lot of things I'm not going to do anymore as a result of that one.
Well, I'm going to a place like China. There's no way I would be brave enough to do that on my own without an OLLI class and all these people that are helping us get the visas and everything.
It enriches the experience to know about the language and the art and the history, which
And the
we've
food.
covered.
The
And the
food.
food.
Don't forget the food. OLLI has made it a lot easier for us to get there.
Such a variety of classes too. Right. From music to art to history.
And don't forget the radioactive players.
The first show that I was going to audition for was the USO show, and I'm so darn proud of myself just doing the audition. And I was in the show, and you can't keep me away now.
When you don't know anyone in town and you do something like this, you kind of, anytime you do a show, you come together as a family.
The classes are taught by either current professors at the University of Nebraska or retired professors or people who are competent in the field.
I have a very hard time when the catalog comes out eliminating the classes I want to take.
I've taken 3 classes at Sheldon Art Gallery.
The summer church tours have been very interesting for me.
We made ice cream over there in the dairy store.
Studying the Civil War and preparing for a trip to Virginia and Washington, D.C. Bob and I actually took piano, beginning piano together, so that's how we met each other.
We have a lot of friends that come to these classes, and we enjoy meeting them again.
And the best part is we don't have homework.
No books, no tests. OLLI is a great door opener for anybody who is getting older but doesn't want to get and feel old.
Look, I'm a big sinner. It makes me laugh. I'm sorry.
It gives me a high. It does.
And it really is about learning, even no matter what age you are, you can still keep learning.
And OLLI has a free open house coming up August the 21st. That's a Sunday. And it's right over there at the Cornhusker Hotel, Sunday, August the 21st, 1:30 to 3 o'clock. And as I mentioned, it's free, and free is my favorite. And Dee Aguilar, what goes on at an OLLI open house? And everybody's invited. Come on down.
Absolutely. Open to the public, Lita. It's a great way to come and find out about what OLLI has to offer. You can explore the classes, the events, the travel opportunities that are coming up. You can meet your friends there. You can reconnect with old acquaintances just by happenstance. There are just so many opportunities. We'll even have our OLLI wear on sale there, our own line of OLLI clothing.
Ooh, yes.
And so we'll all be wearing the latest. But it's a great way you can join, you can enroll, and you can become part of an active learning community.
And it's all free. If you've never come over there, just come in and look around. The professors are right there. The teachers will be there. Everybody's there. And you say, well, what's this class about? And the professor's there to tell you and encourage you to come. And it's all free, and it's good food, and you know, great. We're going to give you just a sample of some of the classes. There are now, how many classes will be offered this fall coming up?
Lita, there are 42 courses offered lasting from 1 to 6 weeks starting in September.
Mm-hmm.
And there are also 10 events, special events, from dining to learning to hayrack rides, just a little bit of everything that individuals can participate in.
Okay, now there is a theme for Nebraska this year because the sesquicentennial, easy to say, is coming along. And so how are we involved with that?
OLLI is using a theme starting in August through the end of 2017, out of many, One Nebraska, focusing on the 150th anniversary. OLLI is also an approved program sponsor by the 150 Celebration Committee, so we have a special stance too with that.
Going out to the Panhandle here, and this is going to be a trip to the Panhandle, the Sand Hills, and northeast Nebraska. But there are actually several other trips, but just to give you an idea. And professors, people who know what they're doing, come along, on these trips. And so not only are they fun, they're really educational. This is just one area because there'll be 42 classes offered. So we'll give you an idea of in the next area, something that you might be interested in. Now, we all love John Neihardt, our poet laureate from Nebraska, that wonderful old man. And there's going to be a 6-week class, that's one class a week, on John Neihardt, his life and times, and the book. And remember, as poet laureate for the state, and I just happened to pull this out of my library. I had the John Neihardt book, Black Elk Speaks, so there's a lot about the native, an emphasis on the Native Americans, and particularly for John Neihardt, the Ogallala Sioux. But that's just one of the many classes. And another class coming up, a particular class, is maybe the Nebraska Prairie Settlement. Now, back in the 1850s, this is how people had to live. They cut the ground, you think about that, and built that up, and they lived in the soddy. And this is going to be done over at Nebraska Public Television. It's, remember, it's special with the producers. Kay Hall is in charge of that, and they're going to be talking about the Indian Wars and the Prairie Settlement, and Solomon Butcher, who was the great photographer. I know you've seen his picture of the soddy, and the family looking very grim out in front. And then on the top of the soddy was a cow. The cow was eating the grass on the top of that is the work of Solomon Butcher, one of the great photographers back then. So that's going to be done with a lot of the producers at Nebraska Public Television or NET Television. So it's a 3-part class. That's going to be special. It'll be held on Fridays. And also, those of us who are of an age having trouble with Facebook, You want to connect with your friends and your family and so forth, but how in the world does this darn thing work? Well, we're going to have a class for Facebook. It's Savvy Seniors in Facebook. Look what she's doing.
I love that picture, Lita.
Yeah, so that's what it makes it particularly fun when you're having that. Okay, the OLLI classes are going to be beginning on September the 6th, and they will go for 6 weeks. Now, you might have a class that's just one day or 2 days, but the maximum is 6, and they're in different locations all over. We always look for a space that is available at a reasonable cost, that has parking, and then all of the things that we need if we're going to use technology and that kind of stuff. So they're all over the city. Now, if you want to sign up and register, there's the information on the screen. OLLI, the OLLI courses begin September the 6th, and you can jot this down. You can call 402-472-6265, or on the web at olli.unl.edu. What have we forgotten to talk about today that you want to talk about, kiddo? Because you've been the head of this from the beginning.
I've been involved with the program since its beginning. I've been the coordinator for about 9 years, so I've seen a lot of growth. And Lita, I think you've captured everything about OLLI that's so exciting. But I think the community of learners and keeping your brain active, using it, not losing it, revisiting and learning things that just maybe you didn't take time to really understand when you went through school. Now you've got the time, engage in those courses, everything from art and architecture to history to the zoology. We just have the gamut covered, and it's just phenomenal what people like to learn.
Well, and the thing that impresses me most is the quality of the classes. Rarely do you get a boring instructor. I mean, these are people who know what they're doing, and they care enough to do it for free, so which is amazing. And so we want people to sign up, but come to our open house so that you get an idea of what's going on. You look around, you talk to the professors, they'll tell you what the class is about. You look at your schedule, see what you can fit in, and it's very, very reasonable.
It is. That's our goal, Lita. We want everybody to be able to participate in Ollie. So for $75 for an annual membership, and you get a $30 credit to apply towards a course, an event. It's really very affordable. And we do have scholarships available for individuals that may need the assistance. So, you know, Ollie is affordable, and we want to involve everyone.
Thank you, Dee Aguilar, coordinator for
you.
Ollie. You've done a terrific job yourself, and we're just moving up in the numbers because, you know, now there's over 1,500 members, which is just extraordinary because we started out with just a few and have grown, and it's because the word is spread that this is very special. So I hope that you will join us. Remember, it's never too late to live and learn because curiosity never retires.
Hi, I'm Chris Beckenbach. We all have wishes and desires for our funds after we pass, and I'm here to talk today with my guest, Andrew Loudon, who is an attorney here in town with Baylor Ebden. Welcome, Andrew.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
All of us have seen offers for television wills or online wills that we can just go in and print. Will that be enough here in the state of Nebraska?
Maybe, although it's not a good idea, but you can go online or do a will yourself. As long as a document is signed and dated in your own handwriting, you can admit it to court. It can be admitted to court after you pass away. It's called a holographic will.
Okay.
Most of the times the problems with do-it-yourself wills are not thinking about the what-ifs or the contingencies. The value that's added by having a qualified estate planning lawyer draft your will or trust is thinking about what if a child dies before you, or thinking about charitable giving, or naming the correct people as your executor or trustee. And so I always say estate planning is not a do-it-yourself project. You should hire a professional to help. But yes, if you sign a document and date it, it's possible that it could work, but it's not worth the risk.
Okay. You mentioned a qualified estate planning attorney. So my criminal defense attorney or my bankruptcy attorney or family law attorney may be able to handle a will, but is that really the best way to go at that if you've got a complicated estate?
The law has become highly specialized. I've only done estate planning now for 17 years, and I've forgotten everything I ever knew about every other area of the law. And you would not want to hire me to do any of those other things or ever to go to court because I don't have any clue about the rules of evidence. But folks should use somebody who specializes in wills, trusts, and estates when they're doing their estate planning.
Okay, so it's not just a simple thing. You really, especially, are some estates more complicated than others?
Absolutely. If you have been married more than once or in a blended family, things are pretty complicated. It's important not to disinherit children from the first marriage, for example, by just leaving everything to the surviving spouse. If you have a child or a grandchild with special needs, it's very important that a special needs trust is used so that that loved one is not disqualified from government benefits that they would receive otherwise. But estate planning for everybody is important, even if you think your situation is simple, because without proper planning, your property may not go to the individuals you want it to go to, and you may pay a lot more in taxes than you have to, kind of like Prince's estate is about to experience.
Really? So he really didn't have a will, huh?
From what we know, Prince died intestate, which is the lawyer term for without a will, which has all kinds of ramifications that I'm sure he did not want. The first one is about 40% of his approximate $300 million estate will go to the federal government in taxes, which could have been avoided in large part by using a charitable foundation or a charitable trust. And then his estate is going to be divided half between his step-siblings to whom he was estranged, and then half between his full sibling. He did not have children. And so a lot of people think incorrectly that if you die without a will, the government gets your property, and that's not true.
Okay.
However, the government does decide where your property goes. For example, people assume that your spouse would inherit everything from you, and that's not true. If you don't have a will and you own property in your own name, your spouse and your children divide your property. And so careful planning needs to be thought even at the first stages when the first spouse passes away.
So My husband and I did a will. Our children were minors at the time. We were both traveling out of country. That was the impetus for us to make that choice. Now that they're adults and we have grandchildren, is it time to revisit our will?
People ask me who's my most common average client, and it's a baby boomer, somebody whose children have grown, perhaps their parents have passed away and they've inherited, they're nearing or at retirement, and that's who we're seeing a lot of. And so yes, that's a perfect time to think about, not that you're going to retire soon, but it's a perfect time to think about estate planning. One of the main topics that folks who are nearing retirement have is probate avoidance. They want to make it as simple as possible for their adult children to inherit their property. They want to avoid court by using revocable living trusts and beneficiary designations, and that will reduce attorney's fees, make the inheritance process much quicker. Probate can last up to a year, whereas using a living trust, it's a matter of weeks to months that property can transfer after death. And then also it's a private process. If you have a probate, meaning a will, and you go to court, then it's going to be a matter of public record what you own during your lifetime. And a lot of our clients are private individuals and would just as soon you not know what they own. And so by using a trust, we can afford them a modicum of privacy when they pass away.
At time of death, Andrew, what taxes are owed?
Well, death and taxes are the two things we can't escape. And I do joke with my clients that I get to talk to them about two exciting topics: their death and their mental incapacity. That's what I spend my day talking to people about. But when you die, the other inevitable consequence is a tax. And so there are two taxes that potentially impact Nebraskans. One is the federal estate tax, and this has changed dramatically over the last 15 years. The federal estate tax is the nasty one out of Washington, D.C., and 40% of every dollar after an exemption amount for every American is taxed. However, that exemption has gone way up. So as we sit here today in 2016, that exemption is $5,450,000 per American. So with relatively straightforward estate planning and proper filings after the first spouse dies, you can pretty easily get to $11 million in protection. And that clears 99% of us. And so we're fortunate to work with a lot of ag producers. I work with a lot of farmers and ranchers, and because of the value of land in Nebraska, many of them are above that amount when they die. They don't feel wealthy during their lifetime, but we have to do more complicated planning. But for most of us, the federal estate tax is not going to impact us because we're below the 11 million.
Okay.
But we also in Nebraska have an inheritance tax. And that tax is transfers of wealth for all Nebraskans based on all their property, with some exceptions like life insurance to a named beneficiary or real estate in another state. But our inheritance tax is collected at the county level. It's due within 12 months of the date of death, and it is calculated based upon the relationship of the person who receives the property to the person who died. Spouses and charities pay a 0% tax. Children and grandchildren pay a 1% tax after a $40,000 exemption. But the bad news is that nieces and nephews, and I have a lot of clients who don't have children, and they usually leave their estate to nieces and nephews, are taxed at a 13% rate of taxation after a $15,000 exemption. And it gets worse. A non-relative, someone to whom you're not related, pays at an 18% tax after a $10,000 exemption. So proper planning should be done to help lessen the burden of that Nebraska inheritance tax.
Okay. Okay. How much money is it going to cost to come in and visit with somebody who's an estate planning specialist?
I think that the main reason folks do not call a lawyer and put it off is they're worried about the cost.
Right.
But it's relatively inexpensive compared to the amount of money that you're going to save after death. Of course, I joke with clients also, you won't be worried about it at the time.
Right.
And the cost savings will be for your children. But I would say most qualified estate planning attorneys for straightforward estate planning can do a simple will and powers of attorney for $500 or $600, which is a lot of money. But if you're doing it one time, and a good estate plan contemplates the what-ifs and should not have to be changed unless you have changed life circumstances or want to change your estate plan. For more complicated estate planning, it might be more. But if it's a straightforward, simpler will, it can be around $500 or $600, which is an investment. But it's a really important one, and again, the cost savings at death are in the thousands of dollars, especially if no estate plan is in place. I was at a seminar recently where one of the speakers joked, we should just not do estate planning because we make more money when people don't plan. But that's not a good plan for you. So
No,
it's
that-
important to have things planned out during your lifetime to ease the burden on your loved ones when you pass away.
Right. So I don't have millions of dollars that I need to plan for. I don't have a ranch in Hyannis, Nebraska, but I have some heirloom jewelry, some jewelry that was my grandmother's and it means something to me, and I want it to go to a particular family member. How's the best way to handle that?
Tangible personal property is the number one thing that folks fight about in estates. And one of the reasons I went into estate planning is I'm a conflict avoider. So when I started being a lawyer and I was doing litigation, it didn't work well because I want everyone to like me. But I can tell you that in estates, after folks die, the number one thing, unfortunately, that families fight about are things like mom's wedding ring, dad's shotgun, and things like family heirlooms and artwork. And the best way to handle the division of personal property is to give it away during your lifetime.
Okay.
But if it's something that you, because you get to see people enjoy it, but if it's something that you're going to keep until you pass away, when we work with clients, we use what's called a laundry list. And it's a separate piece of paper that's attached to the will or the trust and referenced to in the will and the trust. Therefore, it's incorporated into the estate plan, where folks can leave specific items like jewelry, like firearms, like family heirlooms, like the grandfather clock or the dining room table to specific people. The two big problems we have with personal property are, number one, two people want the same thing. That's impossible. And number two, the value of the item. Because if your will says everything equal to my 3 children, but then your daughter gets mom's wedding ring, then her 2 brothers might think, you know, we'd like a check for our 1/3. And then the value of that piece of jewelry becomes an issue.
Okay. How does that get resolved, Andrew?
Well, I call my friend Tom Wright, who's sitting here in the audience, and
Right.
ask what the jewelry's worth.
Okay.
But no, unfortunately, the only way that you can solve that is to sell the item. And
Okay.
that's tragic. For
It
example,
is.
with mom's wedding ring, the only way to
Right.
resolve that is to sell it, because you can't be King Solomon with the ring and divide it 3 ways. And so the best way to deal with that and avoid conflict is to write down your wishes during your lifetime so that everybody knows that's what you want. The value of the item does not matter because it's off the top before the equal distribution of the estate.
Okay.
And most importantly, the person you want to have your property receives it. Now, it is important for me to add there are 3 types of property that cannot legally go on a laundry list, a separate piece of paper. I call them the big 3.
Okay.
Number 1 is real estate. Your home or that ranch in Hyannis cannot go on a laundry list. Number 2 is money, or any form that money takes. Money in the bank, an investment account, IRA. That's controlled by a beneficiary designation or the will or trust. And then the third thing catches a lot of people, and that's any personal property that has a title. So that includes a car or a truck or a boat. Cannot be transferred on a laundry list. I find it humorous that a combine or a tractor, which is worth several hundreds of thousands of dollars, can be transferred because they don't have titles, but your pickup truck cannot. And so that's something to keep in mind. In fact, there's a transfer on death designation right on the title to your vehicle where you can, on your own through the DMV, decide who gets your vehicle when you pass away.
I did not know that.
It's relatively new. It was passed by the legislature recently and has been really nice.
Great. Firearms are kind of a special class in themselves. You can specifically leave a firearm in trust to someone, or how does that work?
Well, we're sitting here in July of 2016, and in about a week, there's going to be an executive order issued by the president that's going to restrict the ability to pass on semi-automatic weaponry at death. And so many people have been doing what's called a gun trust and having that trust actually own their weapons. Although there's a lot of questions about whether that's going to be effective depending on how the federal laws and regulations shape out. And so firearms are a unique item that need to be carefully considered, especially if you have weapons that, say, would have been illegal in the 1990s under the Clinton administration. If that happens again, there are certain things that I know a lot of gun rights groups have been advocating for now. And we're sitting here again, as I said, in early July of 2016. And so a lot of people have taken care of this already because there will be an executive order effective any day now that's going to restrict a lot of those rights. At least for now, shotguns and typical firearms are not going to be impacted. And really, it's the sentimental value of Dad's shotgun that
Right.
leads to issues. Although it's important to think about how ammunition and guns are stored. So after maybe Mom or Dad passes away, we know where that's at. We've had several situations in Nebraska where after someone dies, there's a burglary, and that can be a real problem for an estate if weapons are stolen, for example. And so it's really important that the people you've named in your estate plan to carry out your wishes know where your guns are, know where the ammunition is, and know what your wishes are.
Are there attorneys that specialize in firearms transfers or?
I would say any estate planning attorney could be able to help you with that.
Great, okay. When you come in to meet with your estate planning attorney, you need to name an executor, I know is one of the pieces of information. Who makes a good executor?
You know, anymore we're seeing a lot of conflict between families, and it's unfortunate. And one of the things that I advise many folks to consider is naming an independent third party as your personal representative, what we call an executor now, or trustee, for a lot of reasons. Number one, being the personal representative or trustee is a tremendous amount of work. I tell clients this is a burden, not an honor that you're placing on your children. And so it's easy to remove that burden by naming a corporate trustee like Union Bank or First Nebraska Trust Company, Pinnacle Bank, First National. These are professionals whose day job is to carry out folks' wishes after they pass away or help them during their lifetime if they're incapacitated. But if we're not ready to think about using a corporate trustee, naming a child or a family member who is not a procrastinator, who is organized and is comfortable working with lawyers and accountants and meeting deadlines, those are the qualities that we're looking for. The biggest problems we run into in estates, other than sibling rivalry, is that somebody is too busy or doesn't get around to taking care of the issues of the estate. And there are some very important deadlines at 9 months and 12 months, and then issues relating to income taxes that can come sooner. And so having somebody named who knows that this is their responsibility and will be up to the task is important. One of the most common questions I get from folks is, why don't I just name all my children as my personal representative? We always recommend against that because of two reasons. One, 2 or 3 people can tie or end up in a 2-to-1 vote, which might end up in court, and we try to avoid court. The other reason is just a practical one. Having 3 people sign everything takes a lot of time or come to a decision. So I think it's good to have one person, and for a lot of our clients, they find it very helpful to seek out a professional to assist them at that time. And one of the nice things about naming a corporate trust department is they don't charge you until they have something to do, so after you pass away.
Okay.
So it's not going to cost money to name one of those corporate trust departments as your executor or your trustee.
Well, Andrew, this has been helpful information. It sounds like this can be pretty straightforward if you come in with a professional and have all your questions answered, but it could get complicated if you don't do the advance work on this.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much for all the
thank
information
you. This
you
was
shared
fun.
today.
Yeah, you bet.
And remember, it's never too late to live and learn.
I'm Sam Truax, and today on Live and Learn, my guest, Cindy Van Bibber, the director of the Omaha National Cemetery, will tell us about the Nebraska National Cemetery being established now. Cindy, what is a national cemetery?
Well, a national cemetery is generally a military cemetery where veterans and their spouses are placed. It does not just exclusively stay to those two folks, but is generally for the military and their spouse and eligible family members. A lot of folks are under the misunderstanding about Arlington National Cemetery, and Arlington National Cemetery that most people are familiar with is ran by the Department of the Army. The National Cemetery Administration will be responsible for the Omaha National Cemetery, as they are with the other 134 out of those 147 national cemeteries.
So how was it determined that the national cemetery, that we should have a national cemetery in eastern Nebraska?
Well, in 2011, the National Cemetery Administration suggested to Congress that they lower the threshold of the number of veterans that it would allow for a national cemetery to be in a metropolitan area. At that time, before 2011, the population had to be 175,000, so Omaha and the general area was never fell within that threshold. When they lowered those numbers to 80,000, then of course the Omaha area then became eligible to have a national cemetery in this area.
I would kind of think with Offutt Air Base that there would have been more veterans around. A lot of them like to hang around, but anyway, it took a lowering of the standard to get us a cemetery here, huh?
It did, but there now are 112,000 in the 75-mile radius of where the cemetery is located in Sarpy County.
That sounds reasonable to me. Well, can you tell us who is eligible to be placed in a national cemetery?
Oh, absolutely. Any veteran with active duty service with anything other than a dishonorable discharge is allowed at a national cemetery. There are some time period criteria that has to be met, but for the most part, if it's anything other than training, then they're allowed to be eligible for a national cemetery. There is a 2-year commitment that they have to be eligible for, or excuse me, had to have served for at least 2 years, but that starts in 1980 and 82 for officer and enlisted. Once that veteran is eligible, their spouse automatically becomes eligible. So it's for the veteran and the spouse. And then also it includes their children up to the age of 21 or 24 if they're going to college. And also, if a veteran has a physically or mentally handicapped adult child, no matter how old that child becomes, they'll always be eligible to be placed with their parents.
What is included if the family chooses to have a veteran or eligible family member? Basically, what's included in the National Cemetery arrangement?
Right. Well, anytime anybody passes away, there's always 2 costs for the family. One of those costs would be all of your funeral home expenses, and then the second cost would be all of your cemetery expenses. As an eligible veteran or a family member, the cemetery expenses are all covered. So that's the benefit. There's no charge once they get to the cemetery. So once they get to the cemetery, what is included in that would be their plot, the opening and closing, the marker, the inscription, the placement of that marker, and their perpetual care. The vault is also part of what is provided, whether that be for a casket or an in-ground placement of cremated remains.
I see. That's a pretty complete list of what you need at that time.
Yes, it certainly is.
And so, consequently, there's an economic benefit for the veterans to apply. Well, what steps or processes for the family to make the arrangements to be eligible for them and their loved ones to be in there? What steps do they have to go through?
It's a very simplified process, but it's really important for the veteran to make sure that they are in possession of a DD-214, which is their discharge papers. So if they don't have them, please ensure that folks can still process and make the right phone calls to the National Scheduling Office. But originally, if you have your DD-214, you would fax that to the scheduling office in St. Louis. That scheduling office schedules services from coast to coast, and they're open every day of the year except for 2 days, and that's Christmas and New Year's. But every other day they're open, so you would get with your funeral director, or the next of kin will fax that discharge to that number in St. Louis, and then they would follow up with a phone call. And since the scheduling office schedules services from coast to coast, you would simply let them know when the follow-up phone call is made that you are interested in placement at the Omaha National Cemetery. So
I believe those numbers, the fax numbers and the phone numbers, have just shown on the screen, so people can tell. That's what they have to do.
That's what they have to do. Now, if they have a loved one that has currently passed away, we are doing a process called case establishment. And again, case establishment is only for those family members that have loved ones that have currently passed away. So when they call that same fax number, when they fax their DD-214 to the fax number and follow up with a phone call, then at that time they're going to tell them that they're establishing a case. And they're doing everything they can except scheduling, because right now we don't have an opening date. But as soon as we do, then we'll call those family members back and schedule the service. Now, for the rest of us that are not needing the services right away, there's no list to get on, and there's no possibility of making reservations. We take care of services and assign grave sites at time of need.
And so that has to be a pretty quick process. By that I mean once they get the fax.
It certainly is. Today being Friday, if a family scheduled a service, well, excuse me, if they wanted to schedule a service for Monday and they faxed that DD-214 to the scheduling office, they could call, that phone number right after that, maybe 15 minutes after they fax it so they can get to the fax machine. And then they're going to look at that document and let the family know that they're eligible, and they could schedule the service as soon as Monday. If today were Monday, they could schedule the service the next day if they had the DD-214.
That's great. Now, the people you're talking about that are currently scheduling deceased, are they going to reinter the deceased, or they're just going to have the family members go in? They have to reinter the deceased veteran for the ones that are currently on the list, right?
Right, but there's a lot of different options for families. A lot of families have kept the cremated remains and have not had placement anywhere. And then there are those occasions that families do have their loved ones at a casketed burial somewhere, and they'll disinter and reinter those families at their expense.
I'll be darned. And then that assures the family members would be by their loved one.
Oh, absolutely.
Basically.
They'll share the same plot.
Yes.
Double depth interment.
Double depth, yeah. Well, there are normally no gravesite services at the National Cemeteries. Can you explain why that is and what takes place instead?
Right. At National Cemeteries, when someone comes out for the service, they're going to go to the committal shelter instead. And I believe we're going to show a picture of the committal.
Yeah, I believe we have a picture of the proposed committal shelter.
Right. At that committal shelter, that's where families go to have their final prayer and military honors. So when they go to the committal shelter instead of the gravesite, everything that you would normally do at the gravesite, now you're doing at the committal shelter. And the reasoning behind that, if people think about it, we're going to try to make sure that we do as many burials in a day as we can. And when we have more than one service a day, we're going to do services all in a row. So being a military cemetery, we have order, we have discipline. So when we do a burial, we're going to do the first burials all in a row. So then when we place the headstones, it replicates a military formation, if you will. But now when we do that, and we had 5 services in a day, there would be a trench open, if you will, of all those grave sites, and it certainly wouldn't be safe for families to be out there. So number one, for safety. And the second reason, again, is because we have all of those grave sites right next to each other, it would be difficult for that family to have a private, respectful, serene environment to have a service. So when we do that at a committal shelter, then they're afforded that opportunity to be away from all of the hectic things that go on at the cemetery.
And military honors are normally part of the veteran service. And is that something that we can expect to happen at the Omaha National Cemetery?
Absolutely, but unfortunately, I can't call and arrange those honors for families. Right. Military honors is the responsibility of the Department of Defense, so the funeral director or the next of kin is going to have to call and make those arrangements. Yeah. And when they make those arrangements for military honors, unfortunately, there's a misconception about honors. As a 10-and-a-half-year Army veteran, I'm entitled to 3 military, of course, Army veterans to show up at my service and provide military honors. Yes. And that does not include a rifle salute. So if families want a rifle salute at a national cemetery, they're going to have to make sure their funeral director or their next of kin calls a VSO, which is a veteran service organization, VFW or an American Legion, that supports rifle salutes, and they will participate and provide that honorable service for that family member.
Well, when can we expect the cemetery to open?
Well, we are really close to having our first burials, but until we move over into the area where we're going to have our services, which is going to be in the ETO area, and I believe it's in the blue area on the map that we can show on the screen. And that small area is where we're going to have our first services, but until the contractor turns that over to us, we're just not absolutely 100% sure on what day it will be, but it will be in September for our first burials.
Yes, there we go with the blue area on the screen right now, and then there's the surrounding area that's going to be developed at a later date, as shown on that same map.
Right, exactly.
So, well, I understand there's going to be a dedication ceremony, though, to celebrate the opening. Can you give us some details on that, perhaps?
Right. We're really excited to say that we are extremely close to being able to provide our first burial, so we want to do a dedication ceremony, and the dedication ceremony is going to be August the 5th on a Friday morning at 10 a.m. We are going to have it at Sumter Amphitheater, which is on 108th, just a block south of 370 and 108th at Sumter Amphitheater and Papillion, so that we can continue with construction at the National Cemetery, so we can make sure that we are able to accommodate first burials in September for the families and veterans.
Well, do you suppose that some of the facilities will be, well, they'll be building some of the buildings, so you're not really saying they're going to be done at the dedication ceremony?
Oh no, when we have our first burials for the first year, we're going to be working out of temporary facilities. We're going to have temporary trailers, even a temporary committal shelter, while they're building the rest of the cemetery around us. And then next year, we'll be able to move into that beautiful administrative building, and then have the rest of the 60 acres available for the families.
We had a picture of that, the administration building. That's a nice building also, so it's going to be a very nice facility for people. And I hope that our discussion has informed our viewers enough that they can consider the National Cemetery in our area means what that means to the veterans population and to others in the community. But if they have any questions, they can contact your office through the scheduling office that we showed the numbers on. Isn't that right? Isn't that the way that works?
Well, the scheduling office number is specifically for those that are arranging burials. If they have any questions, I'd like them to call the cemetery office at the number of 413-9121. And then we'll answer any questions they have.
Well, I'd like to thank my guest, Cindy Van Bibber, for telling us about the new National Cemetery in Nebraska. And remember, it's never too late to live and learn.
It is rare to find 3 hosts participating in a Live and Learn segment. That is, however, the case today. Unfortunately, it is because we are bidding a fond farewell to 2. Chris Beckenbaugh and Tom White. I'm Kristen Stows, and because goodbyes are difficult, we have decided to concentrate on the positives of being a Live and Learn host. Welcome to you both, and do you not agree with that statement?
Well, sure.
Absolutely.
It's been a lot of fun, is it not?
Always a good time.
Good. For me too. Chris, you have been a host for 5 years already. Has that time just flown?
Absolutely. As I prepared for this segment, I thought about all of the wonderful guests that I've had on. And you realize that it's a monthly commitment to make a segment, but it goes so quickly, and you're on to the next month and planning ahead. So it's a great time.
Ahead. That's right.
Always thinking ahead.
What brought you to Live and Learn in the first place? Do you remember?
I believe it was an ad in Living Well magazine, which is published by Aging Partners, and it was looking for hosts, and because I'm involved in the senior community, I wanted to be a part of that.
Oh, that's wonderful. Has it been everything you imagined it to be, or what did you think when you came on set?
Everything I imagined and more. So opportunity to share information that's relevant to people, as well as entertain and be a part of their life and their home. Getting to know the guests, doing the research, I always learn more than I'm able to share in just the few minutes that we have online, on air. One of the segments that I didn't end up having a guest, and so I got to reminisce about Miller and Payne and shopping and just holidays in Lincoln. It was a fun episode that I did.
Yes, I remember that one. That was very good. Tom, what made you consider being a host?
She did.
Oh, she got you involved.
I got shanghaied. No, it was wonderful because I was invited to come to view a taping.
Okay.
And do you remember this? Mm-hmm. And at the end of the taping, they said, "Would you come sit up here for a second?" And so I didn't know that I was going to be tested, so I got invited, and it has just been magical. It's just been wonderful.
What have you enjoyed most about your participation?
Well, what I've learned. And the people. I just, not only the guests, but the staff, the other hosts. I love the people. I remember my first interview was with the Germans from Russia Museum.
Yes.
And I actually went there and took some pictures, and I learned so much. And that it really is living and learning. It's a wonderful
There
thing.
is a lot in Lincoln to explore.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. We are full of stories. Some of our viewers may be surprised to hear that we are volunteers that do this, and there are so many ways to use volunteer time. What makes being a Live and Learn host so valuable to both of you to use your volunteer time for?
Well, like I just said, not only all the learning that was involved in this, but because it's the information that we're disseminating information, we're giving, and so much information about services available and wonderful, iconic and some of the valuable treasures of Lincoln, like the segment that I did on the Veterans Memorial, the park. These are things. Go explore this town if you haven't, and we show people what's available.
It puts a spotlight on places in Lincoln that maybe some don't know about.
All of that, and for more, I've lived in Lincoln my entire life, and so to be able to share the stories that are precious to me and have them recorded for the future. And I'm hoping, even though I'm not currently taping segments, that some of my segments that I enjoyed making will still be shown. And I think that'll be the case. But to be able to talk about iconic things, Pinewood Bowl, I did a segment with a lady named Rosemary Rhodes, who's been involved with Pinewood since its inception, when she was in her youth. And to be able to talk about the history and the beauty and the wonderful, wonderful community that is Lincoln, Nebraska in a meaningful way, and to bring those stories to life along with helpful information about fraud, about healthcare, about legal issues, about medical issues, about life for our viewers has just been a joy for me, as well as singing. Tom and I are both old theater kids and love to sing, and so it's been fun to be on Lincoln Senior's Got Talent several times. I'm not sure that I would say we're significant talents.
No, we are uncured hams, is what we are. So.
And both of us love to sing, and so to be able to just share that little bit of gift with our community has been
You are
great
both
fun.
so knowledgeable on music, and you have beautiful voices, both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's been a joy to share.
And I've got to say that as far as the resources and the information that's shared here, that Aging Partners has a lot of wonderful staff and very knowledgeable staff. And so when we have guests that are from Aging Partners, I have learned so much about various issues like fraud. We did a segment on ageism, and just it's been terrific.
Yes,
So.
yes. Can we talk a little bit about the camaraderie of the Live and Learn team and how we actually put one of these shows together, because we have hosts that are from all kinds of different backgrounds and we all bring our own ideas. So let's just kind of talk about how we put a show together and the wonderful feeling we have between each other.
The show starts months in advance when we gather for our monthly planning session, and we come with story ideas, and we'll share. I want to talk about a national cemetery that I've heard about that's being built between Lincoln and Omaha. And somebody will say, well, I know somebody who knows about that. Or I read a news story about the telephone museum. What's going on with that? And so we share resources and contacts, and we laugh a lot, and we share a pot of coffee, and then we go out and we do our information gathering, and we find those guests and we interview them and we prepare, and then we come back into the studio where we encourage each other and we bounce ideas and questions off each other, and then we go in and make our segments with our guests.
And it really is a family kind of a feel, I think, from the Live and Learn host to the camera crew to everyone that works together.
That's going to be the toughest part of leaving. Just I'm going to miss you guys all so much. And
well, I'm still going to come to planning meetings.
Okay.
We will keep 2 chairs available.
We'll crash.
There you go.
Live and Learn does focus on seniors and senior issues. What do each of you feel is the biggest issue facing seniors as they age?
Well, one of the things, the issues facing seniors are, a lot of them are the same as that face everyone. One of the things is asking for help when you need help. I think people are hesitant to do that. I think that that's really important, and especially when we're offering resources that are available. But after retirement, some people have a tendency to isolate. And I'm not saying that everybody does that, but those who do, and you know who you are, if you're out there, go out and meet people. You know, go out and rediscover an old hobby. Find a group of people who have common interests. So I think that that's an issue for some seniors, certainly.
Yes, isolation definitely is. I agree. Yeah.
At the inception of this show, which I understand was 16 years ago.
I believe that is right.
The name says it all. Live and learn. Live and learn. You're never too old. At the end of every episode, we remind our viewers you're never too old to live and learn. And I've learned so much, and I just hope that people will take that learning and let it enhance their life, because that's what this being part of the show has done for me.
I agree. So do each of you have a favorite show that you can recall, that you are a guest that you thought was so much fun to have on and that you remember fondly?
You go first.
Well, I've already mentioned Rosemary Rhodes, and,
Yes.
and our families have known each other for a long time. Harlan Johnson, I was privileged to get to interview Harlan, and that was just to thank him for his so much giving back to the community here in Lincoln. Gosh, those two stand out for me.
Okay. Tom?
Well, my wife. And that's not just, I'm not just saying that so I'll score points at home, because she did the research she needed to do. She spoke about shopping online for seniors and how to do it and at Christmas time.
Yes.
And she did the research she needed to do. Of course, I think she's charming and beautiful and wonderful. So, and we had a good time, and we laughed, and so that was really my favorite segment. And she was able to show it to her mom, and she was rather happy about that too. So,
well, she is all of those things and more, Tom. I agree. So what are each of you moving on to with all these extra hours that you're going to be having? I know that you're doing, you are so busy in your regular lives, but what else will you be filling your time with?
Well, I'll be continuing to give back to seniors in that I am the director of a senior home care company. We do non-medical home care for seniors, allowing them to remain living a dignified life in the way that they want to, be that in a home or in a community setting. Whatever means dignity of life for them is what we will provide. And so we provide the assistance that they need to maintain their life the way they want it to be.
So you'll still be senior focused?
Absolutely.
That's wonderful. I like that a lot.
well, and I'll be continuing with my business, and one of the things I do is I sing for seniors. But I'll also be continuing, I work with people in recovery. And that's kind of what has happened, is that there's been some needs that are not being met, and so it became a matter of making a decision.
And I know you're in community theater, you love to sing and put on shows, so we'll definitely be seeing you there. So if there's someone watching this today and they think, gee, it might be kind of fun to be a host, what might you throw out for them to kind of consider? What qualities, what would be the impetus for them to pick up the phone and make a contact call?
If you've ever thought about wanting to tell stories, wanting to share information with people, this is a really great platform to do that. There's plenty of help and support for you as you develop your stories. The other hosts will be helpful, and it's not difficult. You get out of it what you put into it, and it's not difficult at all to come in here, just talk with the people across the table, and just have a story to tell.
That's perfect. I like that a lot.
And basically a love of people, a love of learning, and just I think another thing is to have fun with this, because I think the tendency is for some people to get really kind of, oh my God, I'm on television, and let that go, because that's really not what.
Yes.
That's not and just enjoy it.
Yes.
And just
I
have
think
fun.
Enjoying it is key.
So
just one last quick question for both of you. How do you feel about being part of 5 City TV's longest running program?
Well, I couldn't be more proud.
Same here. I'm thrilled by that I had this chance and this opportunity and this experience, and I'll treasure it forever.
Me too.
Well, Chris, Tom, thank you so much. I think it goes without saying that you will definitely be missed.
Thank you.
Thanks for
And
appearing with
remember-
me today.
Remember,
Wait one moment.
Oh.
We need to put on screen something. I knew I'd lose control somewhere along the way. If being a host is something that you would like to consider, we are going to be putting on screen the information for you to get in touch. We would love to have you. And now we will all say together,
remember, it's never too late to live and learn.